Today, we're lucky enough to be joined by the owner of UCanRow2, Sarah Fuhrmann, and the lead master instructor, rowing instructor, Cassi Niemann. I'm really excited to have you two on because I've been following what you guys do from a distance, mostly on Instagram, and I really respect what you guys do in terms of just the overall positivity, the focus on technique, and then also your emphasis on continued knowledge and education. And that's very obvious from what you guys put out there. So I'm really excited to have you two on because I know I have a lot to learn from you guys in terms of rowing for health. And I also know that our membership can learn a lot from you. So I'm going to kick it over to you guys to tell us a little bit more about yourselves, and then we'll get into talking about rowing for health. So why don't we start with you, Sarah?
Okay. Thank you, Blake, so much for having us on. It was super fun having you on our end of the world, talking about queuing and stuff like that over in the UCanRow2 world. And so it's fun to come be over here with you now. So I'm Sarah Fuhrmann. I'm the owner of UCanRow2, as Blake said. And what we do is we help everyday athletes and fitness professionals of all ages, shapes, and sizes build their best lives on the rowing machine. And I came to it the way I'm not your average fitness professional career person. I've been in this world for about 15 years. This is like my third career. I came to rowing through the gym. I do row on the water, but I came to it through the gym avenue. I was exposed to a rowing challenge when I moved to this small town in Michigan where I live now. And one thing led to another, and very, very long story short, here I am running a business where I try to help people who are kind of like me, regular people, really level up with rowing. Cassi.
Well, I'm Cassi Niemann, and yes, I'm the lead master instructor with UCanRow2. I started rowing in college. I'd never rowed before, and I saw it, and I'd been a lifelong athlete before that, and I was like, wow, this looks amazing. I'm going to try this sport. And I ended up coaching at Georgia Tech, where I went for undergrad for multiple years after that, and always kind of dabbled in coaching, whether it was with rowing or other things. And at some point kind of got involved into the CrossFit world. And I realized, wow, there's other people who row who are not actual rowers. And that kind of really created this like tangent off in my rowing career, where I realized that I really enjoyed working with people that are not actually on the water rowers. I do love working with on the water rowers too, but there's something really exciting about working with people who just want to move better and move well. And that's really kind of led me to where I am now. I went to Georgia Tech to become an architect, and I did. And I worked as an architect for 15 years. And like Sarah, created a second career. And so now I do this full time. I'm also a starting strength coach. So I mostly do barbell strength training on the side, and then the rowing. And we really find that those complement each other really well, both at UCanRow2 and me personally in my life. And so kind of creating this balance and ways for people to move better, to feel stronger, to just have a healthier lifestyle, whatever way that gets them there. I found that rowing is one of kind of those really great approachable options. And so I've kind of thrown everything into it and joined Sarah to kind of bring rowing to as many people as possible, and coaches. Yes. And I think, my position really has kind of developed into creating as many coaches as possible, because in that desire to reach as many people, I can only reach so many, but if you can create other people that can then reach out into their communities, then the expanse is just so much wider. And so creating this kind of way of coaching, a way of teaching people to row, a way of sharing it in the way that's not overwhelming and too much. That's really where we've kind of ended up. And I don't know, it's just super exciting.
Yeah, and I agree. And an approach to it also that I think is very different from the way a lot of on-water rowers look at it. I mean, first of all, on-water rowers tend to hate the erg. Just let's start there, right? But also just looking at it as not necessarily a fly and die, kill you, leave you flat on the floor after your workout kind of machine. We approach it as being a really versatile piece of equipment that meets you where you are and takes you as far as you want to go. And that can go day by day, program by program, goal by goal, but it's not at all a one-off kind of thing. We view it as being really multifaceted, which I think is very different from how a lot of on-water rowers and coaches look at it.
It's also not everything, right?
Oh.
Like a lot of the people we work with row a couple times a week. It's a supplement to the other passions that they have, and creating and facilitating programs and processes for them to do that has been really helpful, I think, for us and for them.
Yeah. So like, how can you make rowing part of what you do? I mean, if you want to make rowing all you do, obviously we're all about it, but there are probably more people who would like to just make it part of their workout, part of the training that they program for their clients, part of the classes they teach, and we think it's all great. We think it's a great cross-training tool. We have a lot of runners who come to us, for example, who just need a break from the pounding of the road. And so, like I say, and to the point of what we're kind of talking about today, the older we get, the more it's nice to have something that will allow you to work hard without being something that's going to take too much out of you. Like, as I say, we get a lot of former runners who still want to work hard, but they can't. Their knees and their hips are like, nope, you're off the pavement. No, we're done with that. So it's very much like rowing on the water as well, I think. But it's something you can start doing whenever you get ready, and it will go with you for as long as you can push and pull, it will be with you, and that's amazing.
I told you guys earlier before we were recording, I used to be one of those rowers, right? Like even like up to a month ago, I used to be one of those rowers where I was like, it's for performance and there's a high risk of injury, and I'm not sure if it's healthy for personal training clients. And I'm a personal trainer, and I actually don't put my clients on the rowing machine very often because of that concern. And that all comes back from just my experience with rowing and how I injured my back. And doing this research opened up my mind to more of your guys' thought process. And I love that you guys both come from a diverse background and a different experience in terms of how you came here. And I think that helps you with communicate to different people that I might not communicate well with either. So I think that's really cool. And then it's just like, can we reach more people? I love that point that you guys made. It's like, I can only reach so many by myself. So let's educate people on this method and this thought process, and let's expand the horizons of who can hear this. So really loved hearing that. I'm going to read like a quick executive summary of my research review, just to give everyone, if they haven't read it, an idea of the research we're looking at, and then we'll get into it. So for 6 months, researchers explored the impact of consistent rowing exercise on older untrained males. Researchers found improvements in aerobic fitness, muscle growth, and a decrease in risk factors for disease. What did you guys think about these articles, and did anything stand out to you?
So when I read that article, I thought it was great. Of course, I'm always happy to see that people actually can get stronger, even at an older age. They can get stronger through rowing. I think that's amazing. It's nice to see some validation of what I've seen anecdotally for years and years with my clients who are mid 60s and above, just to see them getting stronger. And I thought it was really interesting. I don't remember the exact numbers of how it came up, but basically the older rowers got, was it their VO2 max that was similar to younger?
Yeah.
Was it their?
Yeah. So they found that after 6 months, their VO2 max was similar to someone that was 5 to 10 years younger than them.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty amazing. I don't want to call that turning back the clock, because I don't know, but like, that's pretty incredible. If you can at least, stop the clock. And I'm 59, so I'm very aware. I'm not as old as my students are, but I'm very aware of sort of, where we're all headed. Right. And so I do get very concerned about how am I going to maintain strength and also my aerobic capacity, though, as I get older and as you see your splits drop and stuff, you do start to think about that. So to have something that would allow people to actually preserve that and even potentially improve their health, and therefore not have to think, well, okay, you know, I'm 65, I must be done. I have to just like watch everything drop now because there's no chance that I'm going to get better at anything. That's amazing.
Yeah, the
Cassie,
big
I
things
think
that
you've
stood
got-
out to me is that, you know, one, their aerobic fitness improved, the muscle size improved, maybe, you know, also strength in relation with that, but it's essentially the muscle size. And the big takeaways that I have from that are, one, they worked out 3 times a week for 30 minutes. It's not, it wasn't just brutal all the time. There was absolutely zero mention in the article about any coaching. So these people maybe did it just on their own. They were given a machine and said, do this for 30 minutes. They didn't need to do 30 minutes completely in a row. And it even said at some point that they broke up the 30 minutes. So we're not even talking about 30 minutes of like a steady, consistent pace. It may have been 5 minutes and then they took 5 minutes off, or maybe they did 10 minutes earlier in the day and 10 minutes later in the day. Regardless, 30 minutes total, 3 times a week. And so that to me is huge, right? Like we had gains with that minimal input of work, something that an hour and a half a week, that's something that is approachable to a lot of people. And then the other big thing was just, it was over a span of 6 months. So that real big consistency part of it was also key. And it mentioned at maybe the 16-week mark was where there was an actual gain that happened. So it wasn't in the first couple of weeks. You know, it was a process to get there. So that's also important to remember. One, we have this low bar entry, but also we have to kind of maintain that consistency to actually see the results kind of come to fruition. But they will, even with just a minimal engagement. And that's like, that makes things kind of, oh, I could do that, right? And then the last part was like that there were 0 injuries kind of reported. And you know, who knows, these people could have, well, first of all, they were all male, so there's that. But they maybe never had back pain, you know, or they never had any issues, so they never developed anything. But the other thing, and you mentioned this before, Blake, when you were saying, you know, you don't want your clients to get injured, you might not put him on the machine. The amazing thing about the human body is we're like completely adaptable. Like, yep, we totally adapt to any kind of stress that's put on us. Of course, there might be too much and things don't work, but you know, people are rowing in all different ways. We can all agree that people row in lots of different ways around the world, and nobody's, you know, just collapsing off the machine and like their spines blowing out of their backs, right? So like that to me also made this article really exciting, in that, one, super approachable, 3 times a week for 30 minutes a day. Oh my God.
Yes, we
can do that. And 2, there weren't any big injuries. And adding all that in, they weren't even coached. So imagine, at least I don't think they were. Imagine what could happen if you were put on kind of an effective progressive program over a period of time with assistance, with coaching, like what could be gained then. So that was my big takeaway of it. In that it was exciting, but there are, I mean, I'm sure you'll ask me this anyways, but you know, the limits of like, it was a bunch of guys. So, and they were all in a specific age and all in a specific place and whatever that was. And there's always going to be limitations in these kind of research, you know, projects, but for the most part, it was, I loved that it was just 3 times a week for 30 minutes a day. That was my big thing.
Yeah, I think one of the things that comes up a lot is people will, like, we put out this information, we're like, this is what it says, this is kind of what we think with our experience. Research wasn't perfect, but you know, at least it gives us a guiding light. And research is never perfect. Like, there's always something you can point out and be like, you know, those results are completely false. Well, maybe, but we do have the personal experience, and that's where we bring you guys in. So the three main benefits that the research found, or at least what stood out to me and what I highlighted, was the improvements in the VO2 max, or the aerobic fitness, the improvements in the muscle growth, and then the decrease in the risk factors for disease. Do you guys see real life examples of this with your clients?
Absolutely. I guess I'll just tell you one quick anecdote because I just think this is so amazing. So I have a student, her name is Lou. If you follow UCanRow2, you've seen Lou because she's a rock star. She has every record in the Concept 2 books in her age group. She's 87. And she told me a story just a few weeks ago. We had just finished a hard workout actually. And she said, well, she goes, well, that one killed me again. But guess what? Because I was doing that, I was able to shovel gravel at my son's house for 5 hours yesterday. I mean, I can't shovel gravel for 5 hours, but she can. And, and she credits all of that to the fact that she's just been continually rowing and doing things like Concept 2 challenges and things that keep her motivated and keep her coming back. She's been rowing with this same class for years and years. So she's got a community that she's accountable to. But the health benefits are amazing. We've also had people get off blood pressure meds. We've had people improve osteopenia and stuff like that. Their bone density scans have gotten way better. There's tons of it's anecdotal. We haven't quantified it or anything, but tons of evidence that. And is it because it's rowing specifically? I can't answer that. I don't know. I just know that they've found something that they love, that they can do, and like Cassie says, they only do it 3 times a week for an hour total, including the chat, the warm up, the cool down, the workout, and the post chat. It's not that much time, but they see very, very clear benefits from it.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, what we're seeing are those improvements of kind of the aerobic capacity, and that's gonna, you would gain that in lots of different ways, even if you kind of went out and walked, but perhaps the increase that was seen was greater with the stress that was applied using the rowing machine. And then, this idea of, the gaining of perhaps maybe not muscle mass, but the muscle size got bigger. A bigger muscle can be a stronger muscle, right? So even if there wasn't these specific strength gains, it kind of opens the door for other things to happen. And then the kind of decline in kind of risk factors, like that's kind of one of the bigger things. I know that's more like specific in kind of these diseases or anything else in the, like with aerobic fitness, but with the I guess what I'm trying to say is if we can improve our ability to kind of coordinate the muscles and the movements of our body, we're more agile, we're less likely to fall down, then we can kind of save ourselves from maybe a fall that would lead to something else. And all of that just is wrapped up in something that is super approachable. Sarah was saying this before that, the machine is on the ground. So, this idea of like, oh, I'm going to sit down on something, I'm less likely to fall off of it. So it's all just this very welcoming piece of equipment in some way, if you don't get all caught up in, oh, I'm doing it wrong.
Well, that's where having a good coach comes in, right? Because it can be intimidating. Like we have a lot of new rowers in our world. And, two very common themes that we hear from them are, again, can I learn to row safely? And and it's intimidating and I'm not really sure where to start. So, I would be very interested to find out if in this study they must have given these people some sort of training, I would think. I don't, probably they weren't coached the whole way through, but I can't overemphasize the importance of getting trained from the get-go by somebody who really knows what they're doing, because then they can demystify it for you. And then they can break it down into small pieces that do make it seem like it is. It really actually is. The rowing stroke is very simple and basic, as long as you don't start overloading it immediately with all the other stuff that you can throw at it if you choose to, but you don't have to. And a really good coach, a really good trainer knows to just keep it simple from the get-go. And I really think that is the secret sauce to learning to row well right from the start, getting results right from the start, and liking it right from the start, so you actually can keep going through those 6 months, for example, of this study and stick with it, or for your whole rest of your life so that you can shovel gravel for 5 hours, right? I think that's really important.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that we focus on at UCanRow2, like I was saying, with developing coaches, because Blake, you probably feel this way. You have just, so much knowledge about the rowing machine and rowing and all of that. It's hard not to just like word vomit that all onto someone when you're like, okay, I'm going to teach you how to row, and oh, whoa, here's all the things that you could do. And it can be overwhelming as a coach to deliver that information. And so what we really want to do is simplify it down to just the basics, because like I said, we can adapt to a lot of things, and we can row in a less than effective way and still see tons of gains and probably not put ourselves in a big harm's way. But we can row more effectively, more efficiently, and get more out of it if we row in, a way that is best for our bodies and the machine and the way it works. But knowing how to deliver that information can be so helpful. And I guess, that's kind of like a tangent from the study. But I can just imagine that, yeah, if they had been given any sort of instruction, who knows what more might have been gained in the end.
And that was one of the limitations of this study, was they actually didn't share that much. And I did reach out to the researchers, and they weren't able to get back to me in time, but they did a bunch of other research studies along a similar line, and they had a little bit more information in some of those. So I think maybe they kind of forgot to share that in this article. But yeah, you're right. Like, imagine having that good coaching on top of everything else and all these benefits they found. So a lot of people realize that rowing can be a really safe and healthy alternative or choice in terms of exercise. How do we as coaches keep it healthy for them? Like, how do we encourage them to use it in a healthy way?
I think one big part of it is enabling our athletes, our followers, that a continued commitment, like a consistent effort over time, will pay off in the long run. A lot of times people come and say, well, why am I not getting these numbers? He's getting those numbers. Why am I not getting those numbers? But they just started. And so there's so much to learn. And so you kind of have to convince them to trust you, to go along with the process, to then see the gains and the improvement over time. And while they're doing that, it's like a secret, like that I hold, like a secret of my own. Like, while you're doing all that, you're also building a habit, which is going to create these other amazing results. But that's something you kind of just don't tell them up front, because people resist, right? But over time, they'll build those habits. And as they do, that leads to other things and could lead them to doing other amazing things. And then the other thing that just kind of along with that is developing kind of a progression that adds over time, increasing the volume over time, so that you're not just jumping in and thinking, oh, I need to be doing 60 minutes every day. And if I'm not going to get results. Well, you could start with 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then the next day do 10. And then the next day do 10 again. Like, you don't have to go to 15 the next day. Actually. Yeah.
That's probably
that
is the way to do it.
Yeah. And that the big thing, the other big thing from this article was the 3 days a week, but it was also the recovery that was built in, right? So convincing people that you have to rest, you have to recover. And this is huge in the strength training world, but also in rowing. And people skip over it because they think everything is, it is at a sub-maximal effort, but it's still stress. You're still applying stress to your body, and your body has to recover from that stress in order to adapt. And if you don't allow that recovery, then the adaptation is not going to happen, or your body's just going to get fed up with it and be like, I'm done. Right. So,
and if you're
all of that,
even all the more.
Yes. Depending on, who you are and what you're dealing with, it may be even more important. But I think all of that stems from a trust an understanding of following the process and going with it versus being like, I don't believe you, I'm gonna do what I want to do.
Yeah, and I think I would say too, the thing that comes to mind for me is the importance of, as a coach, actually really going in and learning how to do this and not just assuming, oh, well, I coached, I rowed myself in college, I should know how to do this. Or I've been an on-water coach for, and I've coached like competitive competitive rowers or whatever forever. Working with the average bear, with the everyday athlete, like I say that we, like we do, it's a completely different thing. On-water coaches have to lower their bar, for example, of technique typically, because they want everything to be absolutely perfect. And they forget that a lot of the time, particularly with the older athlete, they're there to, yeah, absolutely, they want to improve. Absolutely, they want to make health and fitness gains and all of that, but they're also there for the community. They're there to just get a workout in. So, and also they may have some pretty seriously ingrained habits that just are not going to change. So, as long as they're staying safe, you got to learn to just go, okay, I'm going to ignore those. I'm going to, ignore the early knee bend. I'm going to ignore the early back or the bad ratio or whatever it is. And just, allow them to get that good workout, that sweat in. It's not going to hurt them. Again, safety first always. So as long as they're not going to get hurt, as long as they're rowing at if they're rowing at a, I don't know, a 3-minute split or something, they're not likely to get injured, right? And so it's about giving them that experience in that community and letting them get that workout in. And, but like I say, learning to speak to the athlete and program for the athlete according to what their goals are. And this is something Cassi has talked about quite a bit, but I think it's really important for coaches to sort of understand, because it's a very different approach from what you might be used to.
Yeah, just the finesse that's involved in dealing with someone who's rowing for fun or health versus for a competitive result, or for, some sort of end goal. And that's not to say that we don't care about technique and we don't want them to row in the most effective way possible. It's just, you become to realize that, like, if this one person is rowing on their one machine in their one home, and getting them to do that means they row at half slide, okay,
So be it.
right?
Nobody's going swimming. There's no water in play.
Exactly. So it's not that we don't care about the technique. It's just we find the ways to run the line of getting people to move and move in the most effective, efficient way that they can, and still be safe and healthy and see progress. Because ultimately, people, no matter what their end goal is, they still want to see progress. Mm-hmm. Right? Even if they don't want to row a 2K in erg sprints or something, they still want to feel like they're getting better. So yeah, I think it's just a fine line of figuring out how to talk to people.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you guys from the perspective of a coach who, coached for 10 years on the water and trying to coach some of my clients on the rowing machine. It's a different beast. Mm-hmm. And it is more about how I look at it than them. Mm-hmm. Like you said, like it's more about, like, I'm trying to make them row as good as possible because that's what I've been through. But maybe that's not where they are currently, and that's not where they ever want or need to go. Mm-hmm.
It all depends, right? That's kind of like the easy answer. Like, it depends on your client, but in general, yeah, it's just a matter of meeting them where they are and then taking them as far as they can go. And that's the beauty of the rowing machine, in that it really does meet everyone where they are, because it's a variable resistance machine for the most part. Most machines are, in that, like, it doesn't start at a certain weight or a certain difficulty level. You can really adjust it to whatever it is that you need it to be to start.
I think that leads into a good question here about damper. So in this study, they had it set to 1. Mm-hmm. I always did 3 to 4. That's kind of what I continue to do. What is your guys' thought process there?
Well, I always say that there's, let's say specifically on the Concept 2 machine, there's a damper setting on the side that adjusts how much air is coming in and out. And so there's the 1 and the 10, right? So we can look at them like those are the extremes. neither of one of those extremes are really where I would find to be the most effective for most people. So we generally say somewhere in the middle and the bottom, towards the bottom of the middle. So 3 to 5 is generally our recommendation. Putting it at a 1, perhaps, and I think it said this in the article, or maybe you did yourself, Blake, of maybe that's what kind of assisted in avoiding injury. And it's possible, because that is going to kind of reduce the kind of feeling, the heaviness of the stroke. But it's also, it makes it kind of harder to row and really connect with the machine when you're at that 1. I would say a 1 is actually the most challenging damper setting of all on the machine to actually be effective at. A 10 is actually the easiest in a way, because it gives you the most feedback. It makes you feel like you're doing something, which is why we go in the gym and we see people rowing at a 10, because it makes you feel like you're doing something. But it isn't a very effective place to be for a long period of time. So I'm actually happy that it was written in the article. I'm hoping that this was done by rowers, or at least people who have some kind of idea, but I don't know how they dictated that that's where it needed to be. But I think it could be different results if the damper were different, but I doubt that it would be drastically different unless they made them put it at a 10, in which case we might have seen something different there.
Yeah, and I would say, there's an awful lot of rowers out there of all ages rowing between 3 and 5 who don't have backs that hurt them. So,
yeah. And to be clear, there's 10 damper settings, so you can set it to whatever you want, and people are effective at all different settings. And ultimately, it is a very personal choice. But at UCanRow2, and the way that we kind of describe and teach the rowing machine, when someone comes to you and knows nothing about rowing, you can't say, well, put it at whichever one you want, because they're like, I don't know what that is. I've never done this before. So you have to have a suggestion, and you have to have a reason why you're suggesting that setting. And we say that for the most general public and the most general of people, and the most people that we've worked with, 3 to 5 is the best, most effective place to learn and to start to practice and to build, and then you start to explore.
mm-hmm.
That's a really great point, because I have a little bit more rowing experience, so I kind of know what the feel is supposed to be like. So recently I've been experimenting with a damper of 1 for myself. I personally like the feeling of it because it feels a little lighter on my back injury, but I also noticed that it is a little bit harder technically.
Yeah.
And then it requires me to really engage my core in the finish more, because there's not as much support from the handle. So I think that was really good perspective from you on that.
Yeah, I would say probably throughout the entire drive, even also at the catch. I mean, I think the difficulty that I find when the damper is low, at the lowest point, is that you have to be really quick at the catch in order to really connect to the machine. And so I would not use a blanket statement that having it at a 1 means that, like, that probably helped keep them from getting injured, because rowing at a 1 is more difficult because there's less to work against, in which case you might be more capable of shooting your tail first, or wanting to open your back to kind of feel that resistance. So I mean, I guess all I'm saying is it is more correlation than causation, I guess, right?
So something they also touched on, and they really didn't give us much details here, so this is just kind of a little bit of speculation and conversation, but they were saying that there was 2 things that they found it didn't improve over the 6-month period. And it was isometric trunk flexion force. So basically my ability to crunch, and then leg extension power. They didn't say what that meant, leg extension power. So it could be hip extension, it could be knee extension. We don't really know. So say those 2 are kind of off the plate, or say you don't agree with those at all. Is there something that we need to supplement rowing with because it doesn't address that quality?
I try to avoid saying that rowing doesn't do this, so you have to do it off the machine. Because if rowing is all you want to do, great, do it. You're going to be in a much better place than you were if you didn't do anything at all. And putting these like, well, if you do this, you got to do this, right? And so, but if somebody is rowing and they're like, I want to do more, or I want to see more progress, then yes, doing other strength exercises off the machine is going to make them stronger. So when we talk about like this idea of creating power, which ultimately is what we're doing on the machine, and Sarah and I have talked about how creating power is actually really effective and important as we grow older. And now they're kind of putting all this information out there. But, you know, power is ultimately force times distance over time, right? So we have these factors that we can manipulate. And distance is kind of our length on the machine, our ability to row back and forth. And we really can't change that as a 5'3" rower. I'll tell you, you can't really change that distance. Okay. You can maybe make your stroke longer and like more effective, but you don't want to compromise your stroke just to get the length. And then time, right? That other factor, the more it goes down, the more power would go up. We can only change that so much. And people might say, well, that's why I got to row faster. That's why I got to have a fast stroke rate. But ultimately, you know, there is some damaging effect when you start to row too fast. And so the only real factor you can manipulate within that power equation is force. And your ability to exert force, that's your strength. So the stronger you are, the more that F can go up, the distance stays the same and the time stays about the same. As you get better, maybe it gets a little faster. That's what's going to increase our power. And so when it comes to building strength, I mean, this is the other thing that I do in my life, right? You have to work against a stress that's going to cause an adaptation. And ultimately, if you reach this kind of point of rowing, you're always working at a sub-maximal level. You're always kind of working against the same weight, the same, you know, your body weight, the same air coming into the machine. And so you have to do more. So if you want to take it to the next level, then yeah, you got to get off the machine and pick up some heavy stuff and put it back down again. That can be done in a number of ways. Doesn't need to be done with a barbell. I'm not saying you need to turn into a power lifter or bodybuilder. I'm just saying that there are other things that you can do that will help the rowing machine. But I always try and avoid saying like the rowing machine is not going to work this thing, so you have to do this thing. Right. And if we're talking about that you know, trunk flexion that was missing there, I don't know. It could be hard to test that, right? Like, so this result might not have given you a good result for that, but every single time you come out of the finish, right, you're swinging your body over. And yeah, we don't want to over abuse our hip flexors and pull ourselves up to the catch, but I would argue that you are using your core and using it in a very functional way, which is the way we use it in our daily life, right? It's not like I'm going to go crunching, you know, 100-pound weights just to see if I can. So all that to say, yes to both. Yes, you should get off the machine and do more strength stuff, but also if you just row, you're probably going to be okay. How's that?
No, that's a great perspective. And I definitely take the other approach sometimes where I'm like, you got to do this and this. So I like that people like you balance me out.
Well, it's more about, you know, what are you going to do rather than saying, you know, like same thing with like nutrition, right? Some people are going to tell you that keto is the absolute best diet in the world and it's the one that everybody should be on. Some people are going to say, oh no, you have to intermittent fast and only eat one meal a day or whatever. What it comes down to is for your overall health, which is what we're talking about in general, right? Not because we're training for a 2K or training for anything, but just to maintain our health and fitness as best we can as we age. What are you going to do continually? What thing are you going to love enough that you're going to come back and do it over and over and over again? That's more important, that basic foundational level thing, whatever that is, whatever combination of things that is, that's way more important than what you might do for a short time. Because if you're going to do something for 3 weeks and be really excited about it, and then you're going to be like, oh, this is too hard, I can't get to the gym, I got sore, whatever it is, and stop, that's a non-starter. You got to figure out what the thing is that is going to work for you and that you're going to love enough to keep doing it for as long as you possibly can. It's really way more about sustainability than it is about making short-term changes, I would say.
Right. And there's always going to be more. You can always do more. You can
Yeah,
always
there's
get
always
stronger.
Mhm.
Yeah, you can always get faster. And if you are training and want to be the best on the erg or the water or in whatever activity you're doing, then yeah, if something is showing that it's not developing one area of your body, you're probably going to have to deal with that so that there's nothing kind of left behind. But who we generally are talking to are just people who are sitting on the couch, right? So if rowing on the machine for 10 minutes is what they do, then that's better than nothing. And not putting extra pressure on it of, oh well, you're gonna end up with one arm weak and the other arm really strong or something, that makes it less approachable and less something that they're capable of just trying. And that's where a lot of people are right now. People got stuck in their homes, they couldn't leave, and so they all bought rowing machines. That's what it seems like to me, right? And they can't go find somebody, they can't go somewhere and learn it, so they're trying to figure it out themselves. But I think ultimately we should really look at that, because people went out and bought these machines not knowing anything about rowing, and they just tried it. So there was no barrier there. So why would I want to put up a barrier and say, oh, whoa, you shouldn't have done that, you should have gone to 10 classes and hired a coach and done all these things? Of course that would be great and that would make them more effective, but let's not put up barriers where they're not necessary, when ultimately movement is what we all need.
We want to build a world of inclusive fitness where everyone is included. And as Cassie and I have sometimes said, every meter matters.
That's right. But also your monitor doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And that sometimes it's just about getting in the movement, and it's not always about what that is putting out.
Yeah, sometimes you need to just put that puppy down and just feel the row. There was a question yesterday about, somebody said, I row with my eyes closed sometimes. Is that okay? And I was like, that's an amazing thing to do, because you can actually forget about the stupid monitor. Like, we are not fans of people posting their monitor screenshots to Facebook groups and stuff to be like, how did I do? Because that doesn't tell us anything, like, I don't know, how did that feel? Was that the first time you've ever done that? Are you dying today? Do you feel great today? Like, it doesn't give us enough information. And there's just so much more you can get sometimes from, this is Cassie's soapbox, I should climb down and let her climb up on it, because she talks about this really well. But there's just so much you can learn sometimes from just leaving all of that stuff aside and just feeling the stroke.
Yeah. I mean, obviously data is important and it's helpful, because our feelings are often liars anyways and don't give us the full truth. But ultimately, I think what I prefer is, I prefer to see you rowing versus your monitor. And a lot of times people say, here's my monitor, what can I do different to change my times? Well, a lot of times I could see something, maybe it's a high stroke rate or something along those lines, but most of the time it's something that you're actually doing on the machine. And so I do think that creating a space that feels welcoming to learn and to put yourself out and practice and say, I don't know if I'm doing this right, here's me on a video. That's like big time stuff. When someone posts a video of them rowing, the first thing I do is congratulate them for doing that, because just putting yourself out there on a public forum or even, sending it to a coach, those are ways that we kind of are vulnerable, and that's not always welcome, or it is welcome, but then it, they get jumped on with 500 comments and you have to weed through it. And so, there's a lot that goes along with that. So to me, while yes, I can't tell a whole lot from your monitor, I can tell a whole lot from you. I do acknowledge that can sometimes be a hurdle for a lot of people, which is one of the beautiful, I shouldn't say that, one of the nice side silver linings of the situation we're all in is that everything has kind of become really accessible online. Like we have on-demand classes. I coach online. We do one-to-one private sessions with UCanRow2. Our coaches certification is all online, so you don't even need to put yourself out there in a way that feels scary. You can do it all in the safety of your own home, which honestly is probably a big reason why a lot of people bought a rowing machine, so they can do it in their garage and nobody can see them.
Yep.
That's great. You're still doing it. I love it.
Let's talk about your certification against a little bit, because I'm definitely planning on doing it. I've honestly just need to get my schedule together, but eventually I'm going to be there, and I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to learning from you guys. Tell us more about what the certification is, how people can do it.
Well, you can do it however you want at this point. We are finally starting to move slowly but surely back to doing them in person. We don't have any scheduled yet, but we're starting to sort of work on that in the background. Thanks to COVID, amazing to say that, but it's true. We did finally take our training online, and we offer, honestly, I'm so proud of our master instructors. I think we have the very best product out there. Because what we have is a situation where you can get coached. If you go to one of our in-person trainings, you get one master instructor for the day. If you come to our live coach certification, you get coached by 3, and these are world-class experts with 20, 30, 40 years of experience. These are people who have been around for a long, long time. That's one of the things that people really, really love about that training. And then we've also recently launched a completely on-demand version for people who just don't have time. Even the live coach training is 2 half days. We keep it sort of manageable because nobody wants to be on Zoom for that long. But even, for people who really just need to get the information and do it at their own pace, we get it. So we have now actually launched a self-paced version too. So what we hope is that we've created something that will allow people from wherever they are in the world to come and get this education so that they can go back out and create really good rowers themselves. And, so we're trying to make it as accessible as possible, as affordable as possible, just because we want to get as many people out there rowing as we can.
Yep. Yeah. And the big kind of thing that we focus on in these seminars is really separating out the information, because people do come to us with lots of experience and decades of their own rowing experience. But how do we bring all that in and split it up so that you can give it back out again without kind of, word vomiting all over someone? So that's one of the kind of the big things that we provide in that seminar. And doing it online, it seems not as good, right? But the beauty of it is, one, you're doing it in your house, you don't have to travel anywhere. Mm-hmm. And everybody sets it up with the machine, so they're able to kind of watch the instructor really closely, and also the instructor can see them. So you get live coaching inside of these certifications. And I think that's what sets it apart from, a class you might take online or a video you might watch and be like, well, I hope I'm doing it right. Right. We'll actually tell you.
Yep.
And then after you get certified, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you guys also have like a really strong community and like continued education after the certification.
We do. We set up a membership called the Coaching Crew, because we were finding that people were coming out of the certification feeling like they had been, deer in the headlights, like they've just been sprayed with a fire hose and stuff, and not really knowing what to do next to figure out first how to complete the certification process, but then, we keep talking about, well, great, so you're going to learn how to teach people how to row, and then you're going to go help other people learn how to do it themselves. A lot of people don't know how to take that next step, how to go from, okay, well, now I know how to do it, I'm certified to do it, but now how do I get out there and reach people? So it's a lot of practice for working different coaching scenarios and different problems or challenges that you might see of people coming into your class or your training sessions or whatever. But then we also cover, all that other piece that frankly you can't ignore, like how do you use social media to get the word out there about even what you do? How do you even get people to come and hire you to train them in the first place? And then there's other stuff that unfortunately you got to think about, like, I don't know, insurance, for example. There's some aspects like that. And we're just trying to bring it all together in a community of people who, as I mentioned, they're using rowing a little bit or a lot. They don't have to be teaching rowing 24/7 or anything, but it's a really great supportive community. And I think it's been really helpful for people as we've gone through the pandemic. And, I'm hearing from people now, we sort of think in the US that we might be kind of sort of partway through it. And it seems like we're not, because the fitness community is definitely still hurting from this. And so it's also a great place to kind of talk about those things. And then also go back and reinforce some of the concepts that people learn in the training, because they are different. And you do forget what you learned over 2 days or 8 days or whatever. And so just to have a place to come back and practice that is pretty great.
Mm-hmm. And we also find that a lot of people do take the seminar that don't necessarily want to coach full time or at all. And
It might just be wrong.
Yeah. And if you're looking for kind of ways to just take it to the next level, sometimes it may be, learning it from that perspective. I always say when one teaches to learn. So just the act of trying to teach this to someone else, you're going to learn what might be holding you back, right? You might see some kind of barrier there that you create a breakthrough, and that aids you in your own process. And also just, if you're passionate about the movement in itself, and it's just an opportunity to learn more where you might not otherwise be able to do that.
Awesome. Well, I won't take up much more of your time, but before we go, I want you guys to tell us where people can follow you, where they can find you.
It's so simple. It's UCanRow2 everywhere. The UCanRow and the number 2 all over social media. That's our website, UCanRow2.com. And Cassie and I are both, we can put that in the show notes or whatever, but you can reach us, both of us, through UCanRow2.com too. Super simple. Come and follow us, please. We'd love to have you. It's a great community.
Well, thank you so much for your time. We'll stop it here and let us know what you guys think.
Thanks.
Thanks, Blake.